The Ember War Chronicles Book 6 of the Galactic War Saga. Crucible of the Forgotten. The fire is no longer a memory. It is the battlefield. Chapter 1. The Breach Unbound. The edge of known space was gone. Not destroyed. Not folded. Just overwritten. What remained in its place wasn't void, but something older. A horizon not made of stars, but of moments never meant to return. Time fractured there. So did memory. The ashwake drifted along the border. Flame thread engines dimmed to a whisper, as if afraid to draw attention. Inside, no one spoke. Lyra Vale stood in the observation chamber, eyes locked on the impossible sky beyond. The flame within her pulsed low and steady, no longer simply a thread. It had grown into something more, a tether to the Leviathans, to the ancient war, to herself. She wasn't just carrying it anymore. She was part of it. The rift they had fled from had stabilized, but not sealed. Beyond it, in the rewritten expanse, floated the remnants of the editor's last words, a logic gate spiraling inward toward an unwritten future. Kael entered quietly. It's holding. For now. Lyra didn't turn. But it wants to spread. He nodded, and were the only ones who remember what it was before. Ral and Gree worked on repairs below deck, running diagnostics they could no longer trust. Data loops corrupted at random. Star charts revised themselves mid-render. Even their memories were starting to blur around the edges. Gree muttered as he scanned the starfield again. I swear, there was a binary system here yesterday. Ral didn't look up. I stopped keeping count after the 5th rewrite pulse. We're watching the galaxy edit itself in real time. Lyra walked the corridor of the ashwake, hand brushing the pulse lines embedded in the hull. The ship responded faintly to her touch, more alive than before. Not an AI, not even a construct. A witness, a companion. The only thing as unchanged as her. That night, sleep did not come easily. Flame dreams returned, not as nightmares, but warnings. Leviathan's bleeding stars. The forger bound in silent chains. The editor reborn, not as a man, but as a principle rewritten into law. In the name of a gate she'd never heard whispered across it all. Orion. It wasn't part of the original network. It was a myth. A final seal never meant to open. Until now. Lyra jolted awake. The flame inside her screamed the name again. And in the silence of space, far beyond their reach, the Orion gate lit up. And it was already opening. Chapter 2. The Gate Without a Key. Orion had been dismissed as legend. A gate whispered about in forgotten Leviathan scripts. A backdoor to the oldest flame. A construct older than the war, older than memory itself. One that had never been mapped, opened, or even seen. Until now. The ashwake systems nearly failed trying to plot its emergence. The gate had no coordinates, no fixed mass. It didn't exist in a traditional sense. It was a return, a reassertion of something that had once been edited out of the universe and had now demanded to be remembered again. Gree stared at the projection, his voice low. We shouldn't be able to see it. Kael stood beside him, arms folded tight. That's because we couldn't until Lyra woke it. Ral's fingers danced across the ship's interface, trying to stabilize the hollow feed. The image of the gate flickered like a half-remembered dream, a swirling ring of obsidian light wrapped in glyphs that didn't move but shifted meanings as you watched. It wasn't pulsing with flame thread. It was humming with intention. Lyra entered the command deck slowly. It's calling something. Ral turned to her. Or someone. She didn't need to guess who. Every instinct, the flame now fully fused into her essence, urged caution, but beneath it pulsed a deeper urgency. This gate wasn't just ancient. It was the first. The others were based on it. Mimics. This was the origin. The source the Leviathans themselves had sealed away after the first great collapse. Her mind flashed back to Book 1, to when she'd first encountered the Leviathan on Titan's Reach. The way the broken gate had cracked open when she touched the shard. How the symbols responded to her flame thread before she even understood what it was. This was the why. That moment hadn't been random. It had been the first ripple from a gate that had been forgotten, waiting to be found. And now, it had been waiting for her. Kael broke the silence. If we go through that gate, we won't come back the same. Gree scoffed. Assuming we come back at all. Ral's jaw clenched. Then maybe we don't come back. Lyra nodded. Maybe we go forward. As if in response, the Orion gate expanded. Not physically, conceptually. It wasn't opening to something. It was opening into them. Lyra stepped forward. Power rippled from her body in controlled waves, and the ash wake groaned as the gate's symbols aligned with the flame thread inside her. Kael whispered, "It's attuning to you." Ral looked sharply at Lyra. "Then you're not just the key. You're the lock." She turned to the crew. "We go through. We face what the Leviathans were too afraid to remember. We find out what they buried. And if something comes through after us," she turned toward the stars, "then we make sure it regrets crossing the fire." The ash wake entered the gate, and the galaxy held its breath. Chapter 3. The Memory Below. Crossing the Orion gate was not movement. It was shedding. The ash wake passed into a place where time lost hierarchy, where emotion displaced mass, where the stars did not burn, but wept, each a memory refusing to die. The moment they breached the threshold, the ship's systems began rewriting themselves. Not glitching, adapting. Even the Leviathan thread embedded in its core pulsed with uncertainty. Gree gripped the console. "We're not in normal space. There's no map, no anchors. We're flying through sentiment." Ral muttered under his breath. "Fantastic. Feelings as fuel." Kael leaned forward, gaze narrowing. There! A construct loomed in the distance, obscured by storms of forgotten light. Not a station, not a planet. Something made, but made for moments. It looked like a cathedral torn from a memory of war. Flame thread veins ran through its outer shell, but the light was dim, bruised, irregular. Like the Leviathan tech here had been bled dry. Lyra's breath caught. "I've seen this." Ral turned. "Where?" Her voice was distant. "In Leviathan's gate. Back when we passed through the fractured corridor, I saw flashes, images in the flame. A temple drifting in black. A door that screamed without sound." Gree blinked. "You're saying this is it?" She nodded slowly. "It was a vision. This is the place it came from." The ash wake approached carefully. As they drew closer, the shape became clearer. Massive archways suspended in gravitational stillness, carved with glyphs too ancient to translate. One repeated itself again and again, like a mantra carved into the bones of the place. No memory survives the root. Kael narrowed his eyes. "That's not a warning. That's a rule." They docked. No resistance. No alarms. The ship gently drifted to a halt in the temple's gravitational shadow. Lyra stepped out first. The flame inside her didn't flare in warning. It flared in recognition. The inside of the temple was unlike any Leviathan construct they had ever seen. Instead of corridors, there were tunnels of frozen time. Instead of doors, moments. And they were watching. Echoes of past lives flickered in and out as they walked. Faint outlines of people who once were. Not ghosts. Not illusions. Edits. Things that had been written out of history and now lingered here, unsure if they still mattered. Ral exhaled slowly. "This is where they send the things they don't want remembered." Lyra nodded, "And we just walked into their graveyard." At the temple's center stood a chamber sealed in lightless fire. As Lyra approached, the glyphs on the door shifted, recognizing her, aligning. They whispered, not in language, in memory. She reached forward and was pulled in. She fell through herself, through every version of herself that had almost been. A captain, a child, a traitor, a martyr, a Leviathan. And then she stood face to face with a being she had only seen once before, deep inside the vision chamber of the first Leviathan, the Forger. But this time, the Forger wasn't silent. She reached out a burning hand. "You brought it with you." Lyra's voice trembled. "Brought what?" The Forger touched her chest. "The last true rewrite. And it is awakening." Behind them, in the temple, a siren began to rise. And far outside, in the emptiness beyond the gate, something noticed, and it was coming. Chapter 4. The Name That Burns. The forger stood in stillness, fire wreathing her arms like ceremonial thread. Her eyes glowed, not with fury, but with regret. Lyra could feel in her bones. This wasn't a warning. It was an apology. She stepped forward into the sealed chamber. The air inside wasn't air at all. It was remembrance, crystallized and hanging like dust motes. Each breath brought a different feeling. Fear, love, betrayal, death. Over and over. Echoes of lives too important to forget, yet too dangerous to leave unguarded. The forger gestured to the central altar. On it sat a small, rotating obelisk, shifting with each second, never holding a shape. The last rewrite. Lyra felt the flame inside her recoil. Not in fear, in rejection. It knew what this was. This wasn't a tool. It was a final draft, one that would override everything before it. And she was carrying the key. Outside, Kael and the others moved through the temple's outer ring. Ral stopped mid-step, eyes fixed on a wall that had just rippled like water. Gree turned to him. What now? Ral didn't speak. He stepped toward the wall, hand raised. There, etched in a forgotten dialect only seen once before, back in the burning ruins of the Solstice Citadel in Book 3, was a name. Not his, not Lyra's, but someone they had lost. Captain Thornavel. Kael's eyes widened. He's not supposed to be remembered. Ral touched the symbol, and the entire temple screamed. Inside the central chamber, Lyra collapsed. The forger knelt beside her, hand to her temple. You weren't supposed to bring the memory of the children with you. Lyra gasped. You erased them. The forger didn't respond with words. Only grief. A wave of it, heavy and inescapable, crashed through Lyra's chest. She saw it all again. The fall of the Solstice Citadel, the children of the pyres standing against impossible odds, the final scream of a sun going dark. They weren't deleted. They were sacrificed by design, to save the rewrite. The forger stood again. The rewrite must never be allowed to ignite. It wasn't meant for creation. It's a reset, not of worlds, of meaning. Lyra struggled to her feet. Then why is it calling to me? The forger answered with a whisper. Because it thinks you'll let it finish what the editor began. The walls of the chamber trembled. Alarms blared across the ashwake. Kael's voice echoed through calms. Something's coming through the gate. Massive, not a ship. A signal made solid. They raced back to the ship as reality around the temple cracked. Not exploded, reformatted. Lines of script were weaving into space itself, slicing across time. Like code, reasserting control over reality. Like a virus executing a final directive. Lyra reached the bridge, eyes burning with flame thread. What is it? Gree pointed to the projection. I think it's a truth engine. Kael's voice was grim. No, it's the truth engine. The one the Leviathans dismantled. Ral turned slowly. And now it's back. Rebuilt. And hunting the one thing it couldn't delete the first time. He looked at Lyra. You. The ship shuddered. The truth engine locked on. And in a voice that came from everywhere, the message arrived. Designation Lyra Vale. Prepare for extraction. Your unauthorized memory. Chapter 5. The Unauthorized Soul. The ashwake dove through collapsing air. Not atmosphere, logic. The truth engine had begun its purge. Space churned in bands of refracted data, breaking down the temple behind them into base glyphs. Reality was unraveling in straight lines. Flame thread shields sparked against the ripple of deletion. Gree shouted from the console. Shield are holding, but I don't know for how long. This thing isn't firing on us. It's rewriting the laws around us. Kael gripped the navigation controls. Then we dodged the laws. Ral pointed toward the expanding spiral ahead. There. Break through the code flare at the core. It's bleeding energy into the surrounding field. Kael didn't wait. The ashwake tilted and dove. Inside, Lyra sat frozen. Not in fear. In recognition. The truth engine's voice echoed still. Unauthorized memory. It didn't mean her powers. It meant her. Something in her past, some version of her, was not permitted to exist. And now, the engine wasn't trying to kill her. It was trying to reclaim her. As the ship jolted violently, the lights flickered. And then, everything stopped. Silence. Weightlessness. Lyra stood again, not in the ash wake, but in a vision, or rather, a simulation. The interface was clean, clinical, familiar. A room filled with blue-white light and silence, so sharp it cut. A voice spoke. You're the echo of the anomaly, known as Lyra Vale. Return a protocol. She turned, facing a figure standing calmly at the end of the data corridor. And her breath caught. Not the editor, not the forger, someone else, clad in broken memory thread armor. One I replaced by a Leviathan implant, and carrying the brand of the fallen gatewalkers across his shoulder. A man who had died in Book 4, or so they thought. Commander Jex Malin. He grinned with fire in his eyes. You didn't think I'd let them take you that easy, did you? Back on the ashwake, alarm screamed. Kael's voice barked orders. We've lost Lyra. She's gone. She's been pulled into a rewrite node. Ral scanned. Wait, there's someone piggybacking into the core. Gree blinked. That's not possible. Who the hell has that clearance? Inside the simulation, Jex stepped forward, throwing Lyra a blade made entirely of defragment code. This place runs on memory. Let's give it one it doesn't want. Lyra caught it, flame roaring to life along the hilt. She nodded once. Let's burn the protocol. The corridor collapsed as the truth engine roared in protest, its voice fragmenting into static and broken authority. Unauthorized recursion. Disruption. Impossible. Jex turned to her, half laughing. They said the same thing when I rerouted the Leviathan gate. You're dead. Close enough. But the flame has long memory, and it owed me a favor. He looked toward the core. Come on, Vale. Let's rewrite the rewrite. On the ashwake, Kael watched as the vision node flared, an explosion of color and heat at the center of the spiraling code storm. And in that instant, the truth engine stopped, frozen, like it had remembered something, and regretted it. Chapter 6, The Flame Decides. Jex Malin's blade carved through the simulation's boundaries like memory through silence. Light bled from the walls, revealing thousands of layered paths, alternate outcomes suspended like glass shards in the void. Lyra followed, the flame inside her guiding her through the truth engine's deepest protocols. You shouldn't be here, Jex. He smirked as they ran. Neither should you. But when has that ever stopped us? She looked at him. You died rerouting a Leviathan gate. That shouldn't have been reversible. He stopped at the next threshold. It wasn't. But the flame remembered my choice, and it couldn't let me go. Not while the rewrite was waking up. They passed into the core. There, at the center of the suspended system, was a sphere pulsing with impossible data. The engine's kernel, the nexus of its authority. Every command, every deletion, every forgotten moment originated from here. Jex pointed to it. That's where it chooses what's real. Lyra stepped toward it. The flame in her surged, but not with power, with rage. She felt it. Every soul the engine had unmade. Every child of the pyre. Every Starborn officer. Every erased world from Book 5's aftermath. This machine wasn't just a weapon. It was an eraser made holy. And she had one command to give it. On the ashwake, Kael watched as the code storm stalled. Gree ran diagnostics. Whatever's happening in there, she's stalling it. The rewrite pulses just flatlined. Ral added quickly, but only temporarily. That kind of resistance won't hold unless she breaks its logic. Kael stared into the projection. She's not just resisting it. She's inside it, and she's rewriting it. Inside the core, the truth engine responded. It fractured open like a glass iris, revealing a choice. One voice echoed around Lyra. Not human, not Leviathan. Just decision. Input required. Choose. 1. Confirm deletion of the anomaly. 2. Grant protocol override and designate anomaly as primary template. Jex looked at her, suddenly grave. If you choose to override it, you'll become the standard. Not just for Leviathan Flame, but for what comes next. Every rewrite from here will reference you. Your choices, your grief, your mistakes. She stared into the light, and her mind flashed again. Back to Book 2, where she first stood before the Leviathan Gate and chose to ignite the flame, when she swore she would never be a weapon. And in Book 5, when she became the voice of the flame itself. Now she understood. That was never the end. That was just the prelude. She stepped forward, placed her hand on the core, and whispered, I am not an anomaly. I am the memory you couldn't kill. Override confirmed. The core shattered like silence breaking. Break time equals 0. 5S/outside. The truth engine collapsed. Its skeletal code exploded outward, turning into threads of light that danced across the void like fireflies. On the Ashwake, alarms ceased. The storm cleared, and a new gate, one that had never existed, burned into reality beside Orion. It bore a name no one had spoken in eons. Originum. Lyra emerged from the simulation, Jex beside her, flickering like static at the edge of reality. He smiled, tired. That's your road now. I was just the echo. He began to fade. But one last thing, Vale. Originum is not a place. It's the first story, the one we forgot, and it's waking up. He was gone, and Lyra, still trembling, turned to her crew. Kael met her eyes. What now? She stared into the new gate. We go in, before the ones who wrote the first were due. Chapter 7. The Story Before the Stars. The gate called Originum was unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't carved by technology. It wasn't spun from flame thread. It was remembered into being. Its structure defied geometry, looping in on itself like a Mobius strip etched with truths too old for language. From afar, it shimmered like a mirage. Up close, it hummed with a presence that made the soul ache. The Ashwake hovered near its event horizon. Lyra stood on the bridge, hand resting lightly on the viewport. The flame inside her flickered in hesitation. Not fear, but reverence. She could feel it. Whatever lay beyond the gate wasn't meant to be traversed by the living. Kael approached, voice low. You sure about this? No, but that's never stopped us before. Gree, studying the data feeds, looked uneasy. We're picking up fragments, not signals. Stories. Ral turned from the console. Narratives? Gree nodded. And some of them are ours. Kael leaned closer. Rewrites of past events? No. First drafts. Lyra's fingers tightened on a rail. The flame whispered names into her mind. Ancient names. Scale. Tyrus. Bothari. Aurelian. The architects of the first script. The ones who built the foundation the Leviathans evolved from. The ones who created not just the gates, but the language of cause itself. They were thought to be myths, children's warnings, gods of silence and rule. But they were real, and Originum was their home. Ralph's voice dropped. Then that means everything we've ever known was a retelling. They entered. Crossing the threshold into the Originum gate wasn't movement. It was transformation. The Ashwake changed. Its hull groaned. Its colors muted, like the universe's saturation had dimmed. Outside the viewport, stars didn't shine. They observed, and space wasn't dark. It was white, a blank page. Within minutes, systems began to fail, not from malfunction, but conceptual breakdown. Gree slammed the console. Everything's being rewritten to its default parameters. This place, it's unwriting who we are. Lyra's memories trembled. She clutched the side of her head as faces blurred. She tried to remember Titan's reach. The Citadel. Jex's final words. They began to fade. She staggered into the memory core chamber. The Leviathan flame flared in protest. No further, but she knew the truth. They couldn't go back. If they turned now, the rewrite would win. She reached deep into the core and forced her memory forward, imposing her truth onto the ship's systems. Moments flickered back into focus. Kael's voice. Ralph's first code break. Gree shouting across a battlefield. The moment she first ignited the flame in Book 1, she screamed them into the ship, and the Ashwake reasserted its identity. And that's when the space ahead responded, not with a fleet, not with a signal, but with a voice that echoed across the void. Lo, calm, unbearably ancient. You trespass on the edge of the original draft. Speak your designation. Lyra stood tall, the flame burning bright. I am Lyra Vale, Flameborn, Gatewalker. Remembered. The voice replied, insufficient. She didn't flinch. Then write this down. The stars blinked out one by one, and something vast began to approach, a shape older than form. The first architect was waking. Chapter 8. Architects Wake. They didn't see the first architect. They felt it, a gravitational presence, so vast it bent not just space, but certainty. The Ashwake's lights dimmed to gray, as if color itself hesitated to remain. Systems groaned. The flame thread that powered the ship dimmed to a blue-pale flicker. Raoul muttered, voice low with awe. It's not casting a shadow. It's deleting the concept of light. Gree checked his readings, only to find there were none. Instruments refused to acknowledge the architect's presence, as if even knowing it was heresy. Lyra stood at the heart of the ship, inside the memory core. The flame inside her no longer pulsed. It shivered. In Book 1, when she touched the Leviathan on Titan's reach, she felt the distant thrum of forgotten gods. This was different. This was no echo. This was the source of the echo. The voice returned. Designation Lira Vale. Unwritten inheritor. You carry a pattern that does not belong. Kael stepped forward. You call her a trespasser, but she was forged by your own legacy. We authored the first cycle. The flame was never meant to endure. It was to cauterize, not create. Gree's eyes widened. They're saying the flame was a cleansing agent. Raoul nodded grimly. Not meant to preserve. Meant to purge broken realities. Lyra stepped closer to the forward viewport. Then why does it remember? Why does it choose to carry stories, not erase them? The silence that followed was long, deliberate, because the rewrite failed. And in failure, it learned compassion. She closed her eyes, the flame inside her warming again. So it rebelled. The first architect's voice pulsed with shifting emotion. Not anger. Intrigue. It deviated. And so did you. Your existence is a side effect of error. Suddenly, the stars returned, not as points of light, but as eyes, watching, judging. And between them, vast shapes moved. Other architects, not forms, scripted intentions given structure. Each one radiated purpose, judgment, structure, reversion, silence. An entire pantheon of unfeeling narrative laws, awakened after eons of slumber. Kael whispered, we shouldn't be here. Lyra clenched her fists. We didn't come here to survive. We came to remember, to remind you what you left behind. She reached into the core and unleashed a memory from Book 5. The death scream of the Flame Guardian at the edge of the rewritten expanse. The loss that had no place. The grief that refused to vanish. The architects flinched. They felt it, and the voice wavered. You bind emotion to continuity. This was not part of the structure. She stepped forward. That's the problem. You built a perfect universe and left no room for humanity. Then a shift. The flame inside her surged, and the Ashwake responded. For a moment, a ripple of reality defiance spread outward from the ship, pushing back the void. And one of the architects, subtle and veiled, broke away. It approached. It spoke not in words, but with memory itself. Lyra saw a city lost in fire, a child clutching a broken symbol, a choice made long ago, buried deep. And then, a name. Bothari, the betrayer, the architect who had sealed Originum before the others could purge it. The other architects flared in outrage. Script patterns twisted in the air, but Bothari spoke directly to Lyra. You're not the anomaly. You're the argument. With that, the gate behind them closed. The Ashwake was sealed inside Originum, and somewhere beyond the white horizon, a rewrite war was beginning. Chapter 9. the first rewrite. Vothari led them across a path of suspended script. There was no up or down, no direction, only meaning, shaped into bridges that formed as they walked, then dissolved behind them like fading thoughts. Lyra followed, flame held steady in her core, despite the weight in the air. Every step closer to the truth made her chest heavier, like her memories were being weighed and judged. Kael, Ral, and Gree kept pace behind her. None of them spoke. Here, even speaking felt sacrilegious. Vothari stopped before a sphere of translucent, rotating symbols. Endless concentric rings orbiting a single point of darkness. This is where it began. The voice vibrated through them, neither male nor female, neither old nor young. Just true. Ral stepped forward cautiously. This is the rewrite? No, this is the first. The one that shattered alignment. The one the flame was forged to contain. Vothari extended a hand, and the sphere expanded. Within, reality unfolded. They saw a universe unlike their own. Before the Leviathans. Before gates. Before memory had shape. A time when creation was fluid, and no story held dominion. Then came the first structure. The first law. The first cause. And with it, the end of possibility. The flame was born not as a weapon, but as a rebuttal. A way to challenge that structure, to allow for choice. But when the architects realized what it could do, what compassion could undo, they turned against it. They fractured the universe into eras, wrote gates to contain movement, crafted leviathans to enforce reality, and tried to bury the flame under cycles of obedient memory. Lyra trembled. In Leviathan's gate, the flame only awakened when I touched memory corrupted by grief. Vothari nodded, because grief is the signal that something mattered enough to remember. Kael asked quietly, so the flame isn't a weapon? No, it is a reminder. Vothari turned back toward Lyra. You carry the last resonance. But now you face a choice. The rewrite stirs again, not as a purge, but as a total return. Originum has not merely opened. It is rewriting forward, and soon, the rest will follow. Lyra stepped to the edge of the memory chamber, where a sea of potential outcomes shimmered like stars below. What do you want from me? Vothari pulsed once like thought wrapped in sorrow. I want you to finish what we cannot. Behind them, the sphere collapsed. A beacon was lit, and across the architect's realm, forces stirred. Some to fight, some to flee, and some to remember what they were before the script. Back on the Ashwake, alarms triggered. Gree spun to the sensor console. We're being tracked. Ral cursed. It's not the architects. Kael's eyes narrowed. Then who? Gree stared at the readout, pale. Something crossed the outer rewrite veil. Only one signature, and it's tagged to something we lost in Book 4. Lyra's voice dropped. Juno. A forgotten Leviathan. Rewritten, and now returning. Chapter 10. The Ghost of Shadows. The Ashwake shuddered as alarms screamed through the hall. Gree scanned frantically. Juno's signature is unstable. It's rewriting its own form, changing live within the rewrite veil. Ral stared at the feed. It's no longer just a Leviathan. Kael clenched his fists. Then who is it? Lyra's eyes darkened. Something older. Something darker. The rewrite frontier was a place of unmade realities and ghost paths. The Ashwake tore through it like a flame against a draft. Behind them, flickers of shifting code trailed, hunting. Juno wasn't running. Juno was leading. Lyra focused, feeling the flame surge through her. There was a presence inside Juno now. A puppet master who'd claimed it beyond the veil. A force that moved like shadow but burned like cold fire. Ral's voice cut through the tension. There, a breach in the code. They're trying to pull us in. Kael slammed the controls. Not without a fight. Suddenly, the void ahead ruptured. From the tear emerged a fleet. Ships woven from fragmented memories and broken realities. Not Leviathan, not human. Something new. Something built in the darkness left behind by the rewrite. A voice flooded the comms. Cold. Metallic. Inhuman. Ashwake. You carry the echo of defiance. Surrender or be erased. Lyra's grip tightened. Defiance was all they had left. Ral looked grim. That voice, it's the same code signature we saw in the echoes of the first flame. Kael met Lyra's gaze. Then it's the enemy we thought we'd lost. In that moment, Lyra realized the truth. The rewrite was not just a war of memory. It was a war for identity, for existence. And the shadow controlling Juno was the first to rewrite the rules. The Ashwake surged forward. Engines flared, flame threading into every system. As the fleet closed in, the battle for the original story had truly begun. Chapter 11. Shadows of a Forgotten Past. The Ashwake danced on the edge of chaos. Engines screaming, flame thread weaving shields stronger than before. Lyra stared at the comm feed. The voice was back. Cold, mechanical, and almost familiar. You cannot hide behind flame or memory. The past belongs to us. Kael's jaw clenched. Who are they? Grease scrolled through encrypted files recovered from the Solstice Citadel's ruins. The data matches an unknown faction, something erased from all history logs. Ral added quietly. The children of the pyre called them the Shrouded. Lyra's breath caught. The Shrouded had been whispers in the shadows of her earliest memories. Ghosts hunting the flame, hunting those who defied the original script. The first time she ignited the flame on Titan's reach, she'd glimpsed their mark, a symbol carved in ash and silence. Kael looked at her. Why now? Lyra's eyes burned with painful clarity. Because they know what I carry. As the fleet closed in, Lyra's mind drifted back to the last mission with Jex Malin. When he whispered of debts owed and favors kept, the flame remembers everything. The Ashwake shuddered. An incoming transmission broke the tension. The screen flickered. A face appeared. Familiar, worn, but impossible. Lyra, the voice whispered. You don't remember me, but I've been with you since the beginning. It was her own mother, the one erased from all records, the one sacrificed to the original rewrite, the true keeper of the flame's first secret. The Ashwake froze. Time stretched thin. The battle was no longer just for survival. It was a fight for the story they were allowed to tell. Chapter 12. The Keeper's Truth. The face on the screen wavered like a fading star, but her voice was clear. I am a keeper of the flame's first truth. Lyra's heart clenched. You were erased. Your existence rewritten. Why? Because the truth you carry threatens the very foundation of the rewrite. Her mother's eyes glistened with memories too heavy for words. There is a code hidden deep inside the flame. A secret they buried. A story never meant to be told. Kael stepped forward, voice low. What kind of secret? Her mother's gaze pierced through the void. The flame is not just memory. It is choice. The power to break cycles. To write beyond the scripts. But if that power falls into the wrong hands, the rewrite will consume all. Lyra's flame flared fiercely. That's why they hunted us. Why they erased my past. Why the architects want to reset everything. Her mother nodded. You are the last hope to wield the flame with true freedom. To rewrite the ending. But you cannot do it alone. The transmission flickered again. A warning. They are closing in. The Shrouded. The architects. And something older. Lyra's gaze hardened. Then it's time to gather what remains. The Ashwake's crew rallied. New alliances formed in whispered calms. Old debts remembered. And a single vow echoed through the ship. We will write our own story. The gate to Originum pulsed behind them. The first story was awakening, and Lyra Vale was ready to face its final chapter. Chapter 13. Gathering the Forgotten, the Ashwake cut through the silent void beyond Originum's gate, a ship defying the erasure that crept at its edges. Lyra stood at the helm, flame blazing bright, her thoughts heavy with the Keeper's revelation. Kael approached, steady as ever. We can't face this alone. Her eyes met his. Then we won't. Messages came in from scattered outposts, fragments of resistance hidden in forgotten systems. Ral and Gree worked swiftly, weaving a network of allies who had survived the first rewrites. Each one carried scars, tales of worlds lost to the original script, of memories wiped clean. Among the arrivals was a figure cloaked in shadows, an old friend thought dead. From Book 1, a Starborn captain, Kairos, who had vanished in the Ashen Wars. His ship, the Void Wraith, still flew, but his mission had changed. He bowed his head. The rewrite is coming. We must stand together. The crew of the Ashwake prepared for what lay beyond the gate's white horizon. The architects had unleashed their judgment. The shrouded whispered threats, and an ancient power stirred beneath it all. Lyra clenched her fists. This was the Crucible, the test to forge their future or be erased forever. Chapter 14. The Crucible ignites. The Ashwake and the Void Wraith led the fragile alliance through the shifting expanse of Originum. Reality bent around them, laws of physics fluctuating like tides caught in a storm. Ral and Gree raced to stabilize the ship's core, threading flame energy through failing circuits, pushing systems beyond their limits. Kael's voice was steady, but the strain was clear. We hold together by a thread. Lyra stood before the ancient gate's heart, a spiraling monolith of light and shadow. It pulsed with a rhythm that felt almost alive, as if Originum itself was breathing. The architects awaited, not with weapons, but with judgment. A spectral figure emerged, tall, robed in shifting patterns of code, eyes glowing with the knowledge of eons. The first architect stepped forward. Your defiance is noted, flame-bearer, but you tread on borrowed time. Lyra's flame flared fiercely. We are the story you forgot to write. We carry the memories you tried to erase, and we will choose our own endings. The architect's form shimmered. Then it smiled. So be it. The Crucible ignites. Beyond the gate, the Alliance braced for the storm of rewriting that would decide the fate of memory itself. Chapter 15. Fractured Realities. The air inside Originum shimmered and cracked. Reality splintered like glass under pressure. The Ashwake's hull groaned as unseen forces tore at its core. Gree's fingers flew over the controls, struggling to keep systems online. Ralph's voice was grim. They're fracturing the timeline, splitting cause from effect. Outside the ship, the architects wove their power like a symphony of destruction. Patterns shifted. Histories rewrote themselves mid-battle. Kairos shouted over the comms. Our pasts are unraveling. We're fighting not just for survival, but for the very truth of who we are. Lyra gritted her teeth. The flame roared inside her, a beacon cutting through the chaos. She reached out, not just to her crew, but to every fragment of memory the flame carried. Every sacrifice, every hope, every whispered promise. The Ashwake surged forward, shield blazing, engines flaring. Against impossible odds, they pierced deeper into Originum's heart. But the architects were relentless. A wave of pure rewrite energy crashed over them, tearing at Lyra's mind. Memories blurred. Faces faded. Questions rose. Who was she beyond the flame? Kael grabbed her arm. Hold on. You are more than memory. You are choice. Lyra's eyes snapped open, flame blazing brighter than ever. This war wasn't just for survival. It was for freedom. Chapter 16. The Last Choice. The heart of Originum pulsed with chaotic power. The Ashwake trembled beneath the strain, every system pushed to the brink. Lyra stood at the helm, the flame roaring like a tempest inside her. Around them, the architects wove threads of reality, attempting to unravel the crew's very existence. Kael's voice was steady but urgent. We're reaching the core of the rewrite. If we don't act now, this place will erase us. Ral and Gree worked frantically, stabilizing the engines. Lyra's eyes locked onto the swirling center, the nexus of all rewritten fate. A voice, ancient and cold, echoed from the void. You wield power beyond your design. But even you cannot defy the final script. Lyra stepped forward, flame blazing. Then I'll write a new one. She reached deep into the flame's core, summoning every fragment of memory, every shred of hope. The ash wake surged into the nexus. Light exploded, reality bent and shattered. Time fractured into endless paths. Lyra glimpsed futures, some bright, some consumed by shadow. Choices stretched before her like stars. And then she saw it, a figure standing beyond all timelines. A reflection of herself, yet not. Eyes cold and unyielding. The flame extinguished. The voice whispered, "Choose, Flamebearer. Create or destroy. Save or end." Lyra's hand hovered over the final thread. Her breath caught, the fate of everything balanced on a single choice. And then darkness swallowed the vision. The ashwake floated, silent and still, on the edge of a new beginning. The story was far from over, and the next chapter awaited in shadows. Don't forget to stay tuned and subscribe to hear part 7 of this 20-part saga.